The concerns that I had before joining the program were how do I ensure that my son adequately communicates his interest for college because they were quite disparate. On the other hand, he also has a very strong liberal arts interest. And so that was one, how do we sort of bridge those two? And another concern was ensuring that he has access to the colleges and universities that he's interested in terms of admissions, access, or improving that opportunity, and also scholarships, especially merit-based scholarships. So, what made me decide to invest in this program for my family was really talking to the CEO of the company and having her share with me the different ideas that she had regarding starting with students in eighth grade, ninth grade, younger ages. And because I believe that it's important to start with the end in mind. And so, since I knew where we were trying to go, I didn't want to wait too sort of close to that point. I wanted to start earlier. And it just seemed like many different other companies are more interested in working with juniors and seniors. And I feel like that's much too late. And so Lionheart was focused on working with students early on, eighth grade, ninth grade, and had a very substantive and wide reaching set of offerings for a complete package. Sure. Prior to Lionheart, I'd spoken with a couple of companies that I learned of through online ads. And that was, over this past year. And I found that either they were focused on test scores or they were focused on, as I said, mostly juniors and seniors. And they really just weren't providing a full package. And so it was sort of, not what I was looking for. So the program brought so much clarity to my role as parent. Not only, I feel like the program is two pronged. I feel like it's focused on the student, it is also focused on the parents and letting the students, sort of setting out what the student needs to be doing in order to be best positioned. And also working with the parents to help the parents to know how to support the student best. One of the things that I learned was that it's important for me to things like establishing a routine, establishing a morning routine and an evening routine, and the importance of that, laying out what I need to be doing in terms of supporting my son by way of his passion project, what the projects, should be. Lionheart has helped with that quite a lot. And so because it's being presented, by Lionheart in doing everything that I'm doing and that I know that I will be doing in the future, it's helped me to be able to plan for the future. I know what we're gonna be doing next summer. I know what my son is gonna be doing next year. I know what classes he's gonna be taking, and so that helps me to know how to support him.
That's good.
He has developed significant confidence in his ability to, first of all, bridge those 2 areas that he's so very passionate about, because I think he and I were both very unclear about how he can make this happen and how he can pursue this in a way that makes sense. Also, working with Lionheart, he has developed quite an amount of confidence. His anxiety has been reduced because Lionheart has provided some feedback and some encouragement with that. He is even more focused on trying to reach for excellence. He was already wanting to do that, but now he knows he can do it. That he's got a team working with him in addition to, me. So I think it's been so many positive changes. First of all, how you guys were able to combine the 2 areas and then craft an entire plan that included projects. It includes the academic flow chart for him that's selected from not just the classes offered by his school, his brick and mortar school, but also the options that are virtually available to him, the options at a local science center, and the amount of time that I feel like you guys took to go through all of that and craft something that was for him, deliberate, specifically focused on what his interests are so that he could develop that expertise. That was very surprising to me because I really appreciate that type of time and investment. It was very personalized. That was surprising to me that a company would invest that type of time. Another thing that's been surprising to me in a good way, of course, just like the strategies that have been laid out in terms of testing, in terms of test taking. I've been shocked by them because they are very different from what I've heard and what I've read. I feel like I just want to tell the world, you need to know about this. You need to, first of all, stop waiting until your child is a junior, you know? So there's a number of strategies that have been shared, and I appreciate those. That has been a surprise. Just overall, I feel like the analogy that I would make is sure, I could have done a number of hours of searching every single week, trying to cobble together ideas. My son could be reading everything he can find online or in books, workbooks. But at the end of the day, we would not have the expertise that Lionheart has. It's like, okay, yeah, I could probably look on the internet and find some herbal formulations if I had a bad sinus infection or something. Or I could go to the doctor who's the expert and or naturopathic, I feel like so much value has been attributed, value that I didn't even know was possible, things I didn't know what I didn't know. And so all of that has been a surprise in a very good way. I would say that the biggest win is probably his foresight. Well, not his not his foresight, but his confidence and his knowledge of where he's going. I feel like he's young, but he has a knowledge of what he's trying to do and why this all makes sense for right now. And I feel like that's significantly different from what his peers may have at his age and what many high school students may have. I look at some message boards and I see some parents saying things like, I've got a child who's a senior. He or she still doesn't know, what he or she wants to study for college. Or, I've got a child who's a junior and we're thinking about trying to do some research, but we don't have time to get it in. But I feel like he knows where he's going and what he's trying to do. And it's made a big difference in his confidence and in his sort of now he's more relaxed. And now I'm more relaxed because I'm not worried because I was quite worried. 'Cause I just didn't know what to do. You see students who are joining a number of clubs. They're at the same time taking a lot of, advanced courses. They are just almost like they don't know what to do. So they're trying to do everything. And I was very concerned about that for us. I was concerned that he could end up burning out. But what I have loved about Lionheart is that Lionheart has laid out a very comprehensive and efficient plan to help him be able to best present himself. And I think that saved many hours of work, much stress has been reduced, future stress, and has increased the opportunity for other enjoyment in life, time for family and things of that nature, time for sleep.
Which is very needed when you're going through this process.
Well, one thing that was new to me is the aspects of what colleges and universities typically want to see in candidates and the way that they look at candidates and evaluate applications to see which students are of value for them now and in the future to bring into their programs. I had no idea what their perspective is. And that's extremely valuable. That's one thing that I learned because once you learn what that perspective is, then everything else starts to make sense. And you start to shift and say, okay, I was thinking that they'd be looking at this, and now I understand that their perspective is somewhat different and they're looking at something else. Another thing that I learned is that, of course, all the different ways to support my son from a socio emotional perspective, from a test anxiety perspective, from a how to encourage him to take charge of his own future and journey. I got many, many tips on that, and I've seen that start to happen already, which is important because, you don't want it to just be the parent who wants the child to pursue these things. Really, it has to be driven by the student. It's the student's journey, it's the student's passion, and we have to take ourselves out of it. And so I was taught through Lionheart how to support him in a way so that he can take the reins and run with his journey. So that was very helpful to me.